Alrighty, folks, are you ready to rock? Because I am. I'm super pumped for today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first stream of the day here on Adobe Live. My name is VooDoo Val, and I am going to be your host for today's Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. We're going to be diving into a little bit of project organization today because we are working on creating assets and things for a larger project we're going to be diving into on Friday. And today I'd like to take some time to show you folks a really quick and easy way to kind of prep a project that has multiple working parts. So we're going to be creating a poster on Friday for our hour-long DCC. And our first day this week, we went over how to create some photoreal assets. Yesterday, we created a 3D type template that you can use and reuse. And today, we're going to be outlining our poster and also creating some outlines for social media posts and things using Artboards, CC Libraries, and Smart Objects, which is actually pretty fun. It's pretty, for me, it's a little therapeutic because I can sit and kind of organize all of my assets. So let's dive into it. I'm going to pop over to my screen and show you folks our Challenge 3 starter file. So this is what it looks like, and if you folks would like to follow along with me, all you have to do is check out the description below and download that starter file following that link. Now our Challenge 3 says, as I mentioned, use Artboards and CC Libraries to design a custom project for files. Project file designed to be reused for large creative projects. Experiment with layouts using grids to create dynamic posts. So we have here a couple of artboards. One that is your 1920 by 1080, which is used for a lot of Instagram Reels and Instagram Stories. And we also have a square post ratio, but I urge all of you folks to kind of think about what it is that you want to create for your projects and then add some artboards according to those ratios. I'm going to add another artboard here for my my poster because we're going to work on a poster. So I'm going to come over to my Artboards project and show you how I do that. So under your move tool, you'll notice there's an artboard tool, and as long as you are selected on one of your artboards and not an individual layer in there, you'll start to see that there are little buttons around the edges of your artboards that will actually allow you to just add a new board. So if I come over here, let's actually add our poster right here on the side. It'll add a copy of that artboard right there, and you can see that it throws an artboard in here for our on our layers. And we'll get into a little bit about how the artboard layers work because when I first started using artboards in Photoshop, it was a little confusing, but first we're going to resize this. So you can come over here into, as long as you have your artboard selected, up here at the top on the bar, you'll see that there's a size area where you can come in and select the size. You can change the width and the height. You can change the background and all of that good stuff. But let's take a look at our sizes here. So we've got a lot of custom settings. Things for the iPad, for Microsoft Surface. There are web sizes and all of that good stuff. But for me, what I want to do, honestly, is I'm just going to kind of drag out a little bit of space here, which you can do very easily just by selecting the side there. And I'm just gonna make my poster like a little bit longer. And you can be very precise if you want to. You can see we have inch widths in here. When I create posters, typically, actually, I like to do an 11 by 17. So I can just type that in here. 11 by 17, which is quite large, but I am a digital illustrator, a painter predominantly, and I like to table at like anime conventions and comic book conventions sometimes, and the standard poster size for conventions typically is 11 inches by 17 inches. So I'm going to zoom out here, and you'll notice that my artboard did kind of overlap with my other boards, but as long as you have your artboard tool selected, you can actually just grab the title here and bump it over. And if you have your snapping grids on, you can see that it allows me to very easily align my my different pieces of my project pretty quickly. If you do not have your snapping grids on, if you do not see the pink lines that allow you to kind of move things around and space things properly, all you have to do is hit Control H. Control H will toggle your grids on and off, but keep in mind as you do this, the grids will be toggled on and or are not the only things, I should say, that can be toggled on and off with Control H. So for example, if I hit V on my keyboard, which actually is activating my Artboard tool, not my Move tool, because I'm selected on Artboard, so I'll come over here and manually select my Move tool. If I select one of our rectangles here, one of our squares, and I Control T to transform, if you're in the middle of transforming something within your project, and then you hit Control H, it will hide the various little visuals there for your free transform, but you will still be transforming. You can see I've still got all of my stuff here, and I'm still transforming my project. So if you don't want to turn those off, definitely make sure to toggle those snapping grids while free transform is not active. Ted, welcome in. It's good to see you. Yeah, I saw you at Max, Ted. That was such a treat. It was wonderful to meet you. B, welcome in. General Kenobi, hello there. Patrick, welcome. Frank, Sean, it's good to see you. Umacorn, hello. I see so many friends in the chat. I love that you guys come to hang out with me in the mornings. Clever Devlin, it's good to see you. Carol Pearl, hello. Ty, Clarissa, Gareth, Susan, RB, Marcia, it's good to see you folks. Hello. Let me peek over here. I see Marcy as well over in the YouTube chat. It's good to have you with us today. All right, so that's just, you know, a few tips and tricks about how to organize your artboards, how to add artboards. But one thing that we want to take a look at as well is how the artboard layers actually work. Because like I said earlier, when I first got into using artboards, it was a little bit confusing. So you'll notice as I come into Artboard 3 here, which is what I just added for our poster, when I hit the caret menu, there's nothing there because the artboards are added. If I select my Artboard tool again, the artboards are added with a white background, but that does not mean that there's a layer already in there, like a white background layer, like you will typically see when you start just a random new project. So I have to come into my artboards and hit Control or Command N to create a new layer, which my new layer panel is coming up over here. So I'm just gonna move that down. So that I have layers within my artboards to start with. And if you create a new layer and it pops up in another area, definitely go ahead and you can drag it into an artboard. So if I undo the caret for Artboard 3, you can see it's thrown that in there. And another thing to keep in mind as you move through this is the artboards, like right here, if as I'm doing this little caret menu, you can see that this one is not actually in the artboard. So you're gonna wanna make sure that your layers are within there because you can make layers outside of your artboards. So just keep those things in mind as you go through using these because you may notice a little bit of inconsistency with your organization, and that is typically the case when I run into those problems. So now we have layers started on all of our artboards, and we can also name these. So I'm gonna come in and call Artboard 3 Poster, like so. I'm gonna come in, I believe Artboard 2 is our Square Post, so I'm gonna call this Square Post. And I'm going to call Artboard 1 our Insta Story. Okay. Now, word of advice as you go about planning your project, because I'm sure that you have probably come to this point before in your creative journey. I definitely have. I still come to this problem no matter how many years I've been doing this, where I know that I want to start a large project with lots of moving pieces. I know that I want to do, you know, whether you're doing branding or you're doing a series of illustrations, if you're doing inspirational posts for social media, whatever it is that you're doing, if it's got multiple parts, sometimes it can be a little daunting to approach all of those things, and it can feel like you've got a ton of work ahead of you. But truly, that's not really the case, especially if you're working in a series of things that need to look like they're interconnected, like they belong together. So my advice to you is to choose one piece from this project or series and design that, and everything else ahead of you will follow suit. So I am actually going to start with my poster. We're going to start doing a layout for that, and I'm going to show you how easily you can actually transform all of the pieces in your project just based on the first piece that you do. So what makes a good poster? We're going to start with this here. And typically what I like to do, honestly, is I like to sketch things out, even though I'm going to be doing graphic design and photo editing. So I'm going to grab my stylus. If you do not have a stylus at home and you are not an illustrator and you don't like to draw when you use Photoshop, I suggest using shape tools and things to line out modules and all that good stuff. Really, this is about what feels right to you. So I'm going to snag my brush by hitting B on my keyboard, and I think I'm going to go into my Blocko brush because that one always feels very comfortable when I am lining things out. And I'm going to make sure that my mode is not set to dissolve, but normal, and snag black, and this is how I'm going to line this out. So I know that I want an overarching title. So this is going to be my little, let me make sure my smoothing is down actually. This is going to be my little scribble that's going to signify my title. And my title could be at the bottom here with something of interest in this area. Or we could do it in the center, we could do it at the top. I kind of want to bring my project to life without your standard title header at the very top of my piece. So I think I'm actually, just by pressing my move tool, which is V, that hotkey, I'm gonna drag my title scribble down here to signify to me that this is like, something that will be bold using our text template that we created yesterday, which you folks will get your hands on if you check out that video and download the starter file, follow along. You will also get it on Friday, because I'll also be including a bunch of things on Friday so that you have access to everything I've done for the week. So let's go ahead and do this. This is, like a bold kind of title. We'll grab gray because maybe I want to do a kind of frame. So if I go ahead and maybe I really love the look of like an arched frame, so I will kind of do a little frame arch here. And I could signify to myself that within this frame, I want something different than outside of it. So doing some kind of design around the edge, maybe some kind of gradient that oops, I just turned adjustments on. Oops. I sure did. Let's go ahead and turn that off. Doing some kind of design or texture within our frame could be cool, and I'm just kind of adding dashes as it fades down. And then putting some kind of scene or other within our frame could be cool, almost like a window of sorts, right? Having some sort of scene happening here would be really interesting. And then I feel like we need kind of a subtitle, right? So we have this arch and our title sort of overlaps with it, but what we could do instead is we could bring our title up and have that hovering within our frame. And let's go ahead and snag some black. I'm just sampling my colors here by holding Alt. And we can have like a subtitle here, some subtext like so. We could also have some text in like an arch right around here. That would be kind of interesting. This looks pretty neat. And then we can have, I don't know, maybe there's just lines here that kind of show like kind of connect, almost like a text arch within the graphical arch. And then perhaps, perhaps we obscure some of our center illustration and or graphical element here with a logo in the center. This is just how I throw my ideas together, because now I feel like, I feel like you can definitely look at this, and while it's not a very pretty sketch, you feel like you have someplace to go now, right? That's at least how I feel. Now, if you are going to be not using a stylus and you're going to be using shapes, like I said, do this with your shape tool. So I'm going to put my stylus down here, and I am going to group my poster sketches together by holding shift and selecting the top and bottom most layer I want to group, and then hitting Control G or Command G if you're working on a Mac. And I'm just going to double click this and call this sketch. And then I can even turn the opacity down if I want to, just so I can barely see how I've lined things up. Now, let's grab our shape tool, which is just over here, down at the bottom, just above your magnifying glass. You can also hit U on your keyboard. And I'm just going to grab my ellipse tool, and I'm going to hold shift to kind of hold that aspect ratio. And I'm going to put a little dot right in here to symbolize to me that this is where my text goes. Hit enter. V to access my move tool, and I'm gonna just snap this and make sure that this is like pretty darn centered. And then let's create an arch. So I'm going to come in underneath here, and I'm gonna grab my rectangle tool and drag out a rectangle like so. And then I'm going to, in my properties panel, which typically will open up pretty automatically for you folks, I'm going to come in actually and before I do that, I'm going to make this sharp. So I'm going to grab my little nodes here and pull the corners out sharp, and then I will unlock all of this so that they're not locked together, and I can alter these separately. And I am just going to, if I can I do this? Maybe I do need to kind of bring it in. Let's bring them all in like that, and then lock them. Yeah, there we go. So I've rounded them all first, and then I'm going to come into these bottom corners, and I'm going to pull them out to be pointed. So now we have like a very perfect arch. Let's go ahead and fill this with gray, just so that I can see the difference between it and where my logo placement is. And then we're going to start adding some of the text and things like I added in there. And I'm in fact going to bring my sketch up above my arch here. We can come in with some text. I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, and we're going to call this big title. Okay, big title. Let's go ahead and I'm going to free transform this, honestly, but you can just come up and select the font size if you like. While you've got your text tool open, you can just come up and do that, or having your properties panel open, you can, resize and all that stuff. But we'll throw our big title there. I'm gonna tap here, and we're gonna call this subtitle. Boom. Let's go ahead and transform that. And that needs to be much smaller. We're just gonna throw that right in there. Boom. And then we're going to add a text which is like an arch. So let's go ahead and throw this in here. I'm just going to kind of tap, and I'm going to call this upper title that is not a straight line. I just need a longer sentence to put here, and we are going to, let's go ahead and kind of center this, and then I'm going to come over here to our warp text tool, which just looks like a T sitting on a little hill, and we are going to come in and let's do an arc like so. There's a lot of ways that you can do this too, by the way. You could type on a path if you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly like this, but this works for me. And I am going to also kind of alter this a little bit, just because it's not as archy as I really want. So we can add more bend to it. I'm not sure why that turned white, but we can work with it. Let's go ahead and make this just a tad bit smaller. So we can add text and an arch here. Like I said, you can also do type on a path just by creating a a circle shape and hovering your cursor over that shape like so. We can actually do that if we want. Let's go ahead and duplicate our ellipse here, and I'm going to bring that up, and I'm going to make this ellipse the size and shape of our arch, and kind of center that in there, just like so. Let's make that just a little bit smaller. We're kind of throw that right in there. We'll put that right there. Good enough for me. And I'm going to turn the fill down just so that it is, let's go ahead and right here, let's turn that fill down so it's invisible. And then with my type tool, you can see if I hover over the edges of that shape, I can type right there and it throws in our lorem ipsum. In fact, I'm going to bump up the size right there. And I want to honestly select a majority of this and kind of remove it just so that it is strictly within our arch shape, because normally I wouldn't put this much text in with this. We could also, if we wanted to, let's go ahead and see if we can kind of alter this a little bit, because we could, well, I'll just backspace for now, because I don't know that I'm gonna keep this exactly. Ooh, there we go. What I'm gonna do is let's just duplicate this. I probably shouldn't have filled it with lorem ipsum, honestly. That's perfect. There's our top arch right there. And one of the things that is great about this, because it's not just being able to outline your project, but now that you have kind of an idea of what you want things to be like, you can start using smart objects to do this to your other posts. We've got a few minutes left here. We've got kind of a basic idea. You can see it's not super pretty and it's not perfect, but as you start to develop your assets, you can start replacing them into smart objects. So let's do this, shall we? I am going to say that, like, yes, we love this rectangle, okay? And I'm going to duplicate this with Control J. Actually, hold on, I'm going to turn this into a smart object first. So I'm going to call this arch. And I'm going to duplicate it, right? And I am going to bring this into our Instagram story, okay? We're going to throw this into our Instagram story. And if I open my Instagram story, you can see that arch is right there, and I can transform it. I can free transform it with just Control T. And as I start to build out my project, because maybe I do want this arch shape in this project as well, and I'm just going to hide our squares and info in here. Maybe I want to, you know, I start to decide, like, you know what, I want this arch to be orange. So if I come back over here into my my poster arch, let me see if I can, oops, did I transform that into a smart object? I sure did not. Convert to smart object. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to duplicate that now and throw that over into my Instagram story. You definitely want to make sure you turn this into a smart object first. So I'm just going to transform this, and we'll throw this into our project. And as I work through my piece, maybe I want to transform this arch into something that's orange, so I can double click my smart object. And maybe I want to come in and change the fill to an orange color. Boom. And we can say save. And because that is a smart object, and I've started to use that asset in various artboards, if I make any changes to it, just like how we were using our type template that we created from scratch yesterday, it'll start to update in other in various artboards throughout my Photoshop projects. So you've probably seen some people do things similar to this in Illustrator. So you can kind of imagine, as I work through creating my poster, and then I start throwing those elements over onto my other artboards to ensure that they sort of look the same. If I make any changes across the board, for example, let's go ahead and turn our ellipse into a smart object, and we can throw this over into our square post, and we can also throw this over into our, oh, you know what? Was that the right ellipse? That might not have been the right ellipse. Let's do this one. because I used 2 ellipses. This is why you should name your layers. As I start throwing this over into other projects, so we'll throw this over to our square, and we will throw another copy of it over to our Insta story. You can see that maybe, you know, in my square post, maybe this ellipse, maybe this is, you know, kind of off to the side. Maybe this one is much smaller because it's a smaller file, and that's what I felt was right for this portion of the project. And then here in our center, if I decide that I would like to kind of change this up, we can jump straight into our ellipse. You can change something in here. Maybe I don't want to change it so much as I would like to illustrate something. Maybe I'm just going to come in and do a little swirl just for the heck of it. And then as I come back into my project, you can see that's uploading and changing, so you can alter logos and all that stuff across the board. Now, not super beautiful, not super pretty, but you can see how you can create like a mega file here, utilize it for multiple projects to very quickly reorient and restructure large projects that have multiple pieces. So that is all the time I have for you folks today. I hope you've learned a little something about clever ways to organize your large projects here in Photoshop. I am going to take off, but I'll be back later today hosting Aaron Nace of Flern, which I'm super excited about, and I will see you Friday for an extra long DCC where we can put together the main chunk of our project. We'll get into some super details and really get that poster looking nice. So until then, folks, adios.